Man, guys, this week of Love is Blind is really good. I don't know how they're gonna top what we just heard. Oh my gosh, is that who I think it is? The producers are producing. Give me the Cheez-Its. Give them to me. Thank you. Thank you. Cheez-Its sponsor me. Oh my gosh, this is good. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real recap and review for week 2 of Love is Blind season 6. Episodes 7 through 9 were really good, y'all. Now, when I tell you this is probably the most entertained I've been with Love is Blind in a little while, I mean it. This week, our contestants had a few different things that happened. They left the Dominican Republic, they're back to reality in Charlotte, North Carolina. They met friends and family, and snakes are slithering in the garden. Somebody call animal control, because y'all, this thing is getting buck wild. Now, before we get into all of my spoiler free thoughts and spoiler filled thoughts, just remember there's time codes below, and in the description below you can find my recap for week 1 of season 6, which again, I gotta say thank you all so much, because it's one of the best performing videos of the year, and I'm expecting this one to do even better because there's a lot we got to talk about. And hey, if you're new to the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about Love is Blind and a ton of different other movies and TV shows and all the news in between. So go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment down below and let me know, you guys, which moment was your favorite, because I've got a handful of them. Alrighty, y'all, so we're going to begin with my spoiler-free thoughts in case you're watching this and haven't seen episodes 7, 8, and 9. And like I mentioned, this week is already more entertaining than week 1. Week 1, we got a huge bundle of episodes, right? We got 6 episodes, and man, we definitely went through all of them last week, but this week we got 3, and I thought, that's not a good sign, right? I mean, maybe we're going to be left wanting more. And I was left wanting more in the best way, because there were so many cliffhangers, twists, and turns. I was getting whiplash, y'all. And I just really feel like episodes 8 and 9 are peak Love is Blind. And what I mean by that is, when this show is firing on all cylinders, you feel it as a viewer. And me, even as a critic, I can tell that some of the cuts, for example, the editing decisions, they really aid the drama. And that was one of my biggest takeaways, is that the editing was really good this week in terms of reality television. You want to really keep the tension at its peak, and maybe you want to edit to make it seem more interesting than it is, because there are some conversations this week where I thought, all right, they're not really going anywhere, but they snap me right back to it, and there's drama somehow. I found those in between Amy and Johnny's conversations, but I will tell you, all the other couples, they experienced things this week that you probably would not have guessed. And there are also strong cliffhangers to both episodes 8 and 9 that I think will come up to play next week in a big way, especially episode 8. What happens at the end of that episode? I'm telling you guys, you're probably gonna come back into the comments and tell me, James, you should have seen this one coming. And you know what? Maybe I should have, but I'll be honest, I was shocked. My jaw was on the ground. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. And again, we'll talk about that in the spoiler recap. But yeah, guys, I really enjoyed this week of Love is Blind, but there was one thing that made me scratch my head. Now, last week I know I told you the music, while it's not great, you know, it wasn't unbearable, but this week the soundtrack was awful, and it was just on the nose. I mean, the music is never really good in Love is Blind. Let me be honest with you guys, it's not good. But this week it was particularly bad. We were getting songs with lyrics like, "The fire is getting hot," "I'll love you forever." Like, they literally were saying things that these contestants were probably telling each other. I mean, gosh, can we get a little bit more inventive? Or go with no soundtrack and go with a score. Get some instrumentals, you know what I mean? Do something other than including those songs. But hey, for the artists that are included, I mean, at least you're getting some shine and exposure. I'm talking about it, aren't I? Yeah. And to be completely honest with you, I don't even want to spend any more time in the spoiler-free section, because everything else I gotta say needs to be in this spoiler section. So you're getting one warning, y'all. Spoilers ahead. And again, if you have not watched all 3 episodes this week, like this video, come back here, guys, subscribe to the channel, because I don't want y'all to miss out on all these thoughts I have, because my commentary is it's gonna be rich this week. So let's begin, you guys, with my week 2 spoiler recap and review, and we're gonna start in this section. The second couples meetup took place in the Dominican Republic, but not much happens this time around. There were some conversations, and sure, there were some interesting moments, but I won't tell you that anything groundbreaking occurred. Chelsea was telling her girlfriends that her and Jimmy are on a whole nother level now, and you know what they're insinuating. yeah, they didn't just beat Super Mario. They're talking about something else. I will say that Chelsea and Jimmy seem like they're at least getting back to a level of, I don't know, trust in one another. I mean, I'll save a little bit of that commentary for this next section, but for now, they seem to be going steady, right? So there are two conversations happening. You got the girls, you got the guys, and then they kind of have co-ed conversations. And the one to note really is between, to me, is like Johnny and Laura. Like, Laura is a snake, y'all. She's snake number one. There are two snakes this season, and she's one of them because she's kind of stirring the pot, asking some weird questions. She asked Johnny, you know, are you and Amy doing things? You catch my drift? And Johnny says, yo, we're really not. We're taking it slow. So I don't blame him for keeping Laura out of his business. Seriously, it's their business. Laura needs to butt out. And then on the other hand, you have Jeremy and Amy having a conversation. It's like the couples are swip-swapping partners here. And Amy tells Jeremy, listen, my dad's not very supportive of this process. In the way she said that, I thought, he must have really been against this, because you could tell her energy just went all the way down to like a 0. She was super timid when she was saying this to Jeremy. I'm wondering if she's very nervous about whether Johnny will even meet her dad, or if her dad even wants to meet Johnny. And the last note I have in this couples meetup section is, well, Jeremy said he wants to be friends with Sarah Ann outside of the show. And listen, Jeremy didn't say this to Laura, but if Laura overheard, she'd freak out. Well, she freaks out later during this week's episodes. But again, I don't want to get ahead of myself here. It's going to come into play later in the recap, I promise. Stay tuned. So now we're officially at the end of our vacation in the Dominican Republic, and as we spend the final day, there are some notes I have for our couples. So I want to start with AD and Clay. They're having their final meal together in the Dominican Republic, and Clay, let me tell y'all, the way he eats, he's destroying his soup. You can tell he must have been an athlete in his past life, because that man was going hard. And I'm like, bro, who are we running from, or who are you trying to escape from? Because it looks like you're just going in, no manners at all. However, I will say he did something at the end of their meal that I actually didn't have an issue with, which was like pre-bussing the table that AD seemed to hate. She was making faces and everything. I pre-bus tables with my girlfriend. We do that because we both were in the hospitality industry before, in the restaurant business. So we know if you pre-bus a table, your bussers will really thank you for it, and so will the servers. You can turn tables over faster. It's just courtesy, you know? So after their meal, they decided to have a really serious conversation, and Clay said he's thinking about the fact that he doesn't want to let AD down, and sometimes he gets in his head. I've noticed that this has been a pattern for him. He's always thinking of the worst case scenario. I don't want to let you down. I don't want to cheat on you. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I want to love you and make sure you're loved. That's sweet, but at some point, you do sort of start to wonder, like, is this because of something he's seen in his past? And, well, it's true. It sounds like Clay really has had a really bad view of what a family structure looks like, and we do learn, of course, that his mom and dad divorced many years into their marriage, so he thought it was a sure thing, and it wasn't, so it's probably messing with him in a way. I did find it weird that AD was taken aback by this comment, though, and I do think she might even be overthinking it a bit, instead of talking it through with him and trying to get to the root of his feelings on the matter. So they'll have to figure that out. Again, there's probably going to need to be a balance. I mean, Clay's mom says so. You got to find a balance, right? So we'll see what happens. Now, the next couple we're talking about is Jimmy and Chelsea. Not many notes here, to be honest. At the end of their vacation in the Dominican Republic, Jimmy just apologizes to Chelsea and says, listen, the argument we had in week 1, I'm so sorry. I should have, come across nicer. We should have had a calmer conversation. And Chelsea forgives him, and hey, they're back like nothing ever happened. But something will happen. And then we got Jeremy and Laura. So they had a really big tiff, apparently. Jeremy iced out Laura after the couples meet up, and they slept in different spots in their hotel room. How big is this hotel room? But when they started to have that conversation, sort of like talking about what had happened the night before, Jeremy gets pretty defensive in his conversation. He raises his voice a little bit, and I'm like, the man's annoyed with her. However, I don't blame Laura for setting the record straight. She says, listen, I don't know if I'm so sure that I'm going to marry you now, because I just wanted to let you know how you were acting, and you telling AD about that bean dip joke was dumb. First of all, the joke itself is dumb, should never have been brought up, but Jeremy was acting a little immature by spilling the beans about that, Jeremy then ends the conversation by saying, hey, we're the top couple. Hey, we communicate the best. Okay, listen, Jeremy, I'm not gonna lie to you. My eyesight's not great, and I know yours isn't that great either, but do you need a new pair of glasses? Because everyone can see that what you said was nonsense, okay? Ain't no way y'all the top couple. You might think that, but based on what communication, like you said, no. No. Next up is Kenneth and Brittany. They eventually have a conversation together about AD and the conversation that Kenneth had with AD regarding race. And Brittany brings up a little bit more about her past. They're having this conversation in the hotel room, and Brittany says, listen, I've been faced with scrutiny for previous interracial relationships. So Brittany is constantly, it sounds like, dating outside of her race. Not a bad thing. And honestly, the way they're cutting around this and editing, it's kind of like what I said last week. They're kind of, producers are producering again. They're trying to make this very much about race and making Kenneth in a way feel uncomfortable about it too. It's interesting how they're splicing up the different clips. And before they left the Dominican Republic, I noticed a surprise turn for their relationship. There was some sort of awkwardness going on between them on their boat date. I mean, what's going on? They were my number one couple, them, and then Amy and Johnny, and what happened? What happened, y'all? I'm sitting there thinking that as I'm watching this episode, and they begin to open up a little bit on the boat once they see dolphins. Okay, I mean, whatever it takes, I guess. But then it's right back to the awkwardness once the dolphins leave. Whew. Y'all, I don't know. You know when you feel secondhand embarrassment in a way? That's how I was kind of feeling. And Brittany finally breaks the ice and says, yo, Kenneth, you could answer my love language of physical touch more often. And Kenneth, I guess, didn't know that was her love language, which is kind of surprising because you'd think they'd talk about that in the pods. So something is going on between them, y'all, and I don't know what it is, but trust me, we find out about them and their status of their relationship later on in this recap. Man. And lastly in this section, we're talking about Amy and Johnny. They go on a cute horseback riding date. It looks really cool. They got helmets on. Thank God they're being safe. And Amy, eventually, once they sit down and settle, I guess, and have lunch, Amy says she's nervous because everything has been perfect so far. I get it, you know? I mean, you're in that honeymoon phase, literally and figuratively in a way. So, yeah. Listen, it's bound to be something that's brought up. So Amy brought it up, and Johnny, you know, he's just vibing. Literally vibing so much to the point where apparently we find out he says, what's up, chicken butt, all the time. So he's super chill in the Dominican Republic. He's not ready to have these conversations about 401ks and pensions just yet. But we get there, and, you know, eventually they do have a more serious conversation, and Amy brings up her father again and says, hey, I can't marry you if I don't get my father's blessing. Remember when we talked about how Amy's dad doesn't approve of the process? I see where this is going. Alrighty, y'all, so it's time to check in for our flights and get back on into Charlotte, North Carolina. We're going home, guys. It's 21 days until weddings. All the contestants have their devices back, and they're now going to live together for a short period of time before weddings. So in Laura and Jeremy's case, guys, man, they're an interesting couple here. You know, Laura said, hey, look, if you're going to be messy, I can't get married to you. She finds out very quickly he's not messy, and he's actually probably cleaner than she is. And the producers are, at this point, right, really trying to make Laura and Jeremy a thing. And I didn't know why they were doing that, but leave it up to the Love is Blind team, because by episode 9, I understood why we spent so much time with Laura and Jeremy. Now shifting to Brittany and Kenneth, once they get settled back home in Charlotte, Kenneth says, yo, first night together, you gotta cook. Excuse me. No. Okay, see, maybe this is my personal opinion coming into play here, but if it's my first night with my fiance, right? No. You're not going to cook. I'm gonna cook with you, but I'm not gonna say you gotta cook. What in the 1900s is going on here? But hey, that's me personally. However, one thing that I think we can all agree on is that Kenneth is really attached to his phone. He makes it a point to say he missed his device. But man, he just continues to ignore Brittany in a couple of moments. And as time goes on during this week's of episodes, he continues to ignore her for his phone. I mean, is Angry Bird really that important to play? Or, I mean, I guess you're busy, you're a principal, but are you really that busy where every time you guys try to have a conversation, you're on your phone? It's interesting, but not in a good way. So now we're going to talk about AD and Clay. You know, they get back to Charlotte, and we learn a fun fact about AD. AD equals Amber, Desiree. So I guess Matthew really loves both Ambers, huh? Or loved them in the pods. Bad joke, I know. Clay eventually opens up to AD a little bit more, though, about his dad cheating on his mom and their internal struggles. So this was interesting because, you know, now I can see maybe where some of Clay's insecurities lie in relationships, because if he saw his dad cheat on his mom after they had been married for more than a decade, yeah, that's gonna be scarring. And eventually Clay continues to open up and says, hey, there are black men that I look up to, though, especially those in Hollywood. And he said, well, he looks up to Diddy. Yeah, P. Diddy. I feel icky saying it. I feel bad saying P. Diddy, especially in this current climate. If you don't know, you're going to know when you Google it. But I have one question, bro. When was this filmed? Because how are you going to say that after learning about P. Diddy? I don't know. I feel bad. I gotta go check in my car. I hope P. Diddy's not tampering with it, you know? But golly, is that a red flag? And I'm not saying Clay's gonna redeem himself here in this next note, but hey, he had a throwback Miami Dolphins jersey in his closet early 2000s era, so I'll give him props for that one. I think I got one too. It's just in my storage closet. Alrighty, guys. So lastly in this section, let's talk about Chelsea and Jimmy. How do I have so many notes? Mamma mia. Jimmy eventually meets Chelsea's roommate and says, hey, your roommate is too much and I can't live with you there. So I guess if he's anything, he's honest. Eventually, though, Chelsea's friends visit, so more than just her roommate, and they're asking questions about a lot of things, like Trevor. I knew his name would come up again in week 2. And it also sounds like Chelsea liked Trevor a little bit more than we were let on. So Chelsea's like, all right, let's flip that and reverse it, because I remember when Jimmy saw a photo of Jessica when he got back. So apparently when they got their devices, did Jimmy look up Jessica's Instagram or something? Well, Chelsea clearly saw her profile, or one of her social profiles, because Chelsea's like, hey, she's stunning. So maybe they did this together, which is weird, right? And at this point of them being at home, Chelsea's like, yo, Jimmy, you're not being very affectionate. And there's a little argument that's brewing here, because Chelsea then tells Jimmy, I feel like you're going through the motions. I'm trying, and you're just not reciprocating. So Jimmy is fed up. That man's like, bro, I've been working all day, dog. Listen, you're being too clingy. That's what he tells her, and Chelsea flips a lid, y'all. That's a word you don't want to say around Chelsea. Like at the reunion, if someone just says, Chelsea, you're clingy, end of the reunion, she's flipping all the sofas over, because yeah, Chelsea's upset. So what does Chelsea do? Chelsea's like, well, okay, if we're gonna go there, then you know what? You saw Jessica's photo, and I'm still upset about that. Is it maybe that you're arguing with me because you saw her photo? I mean, Lord. I think this is probably the most exhausted I've been so far at this point in Love is Blind Season 6. But my question is Chelsea a little insecure because they both saw Jessica's Instagram profile? I don't know. And then Jimmy's like, all right, well, I'm going to clap back. Remember when you said that I wasn't giving any sort of affection to you? Hey, you're the one who actually wanted to do a certain thing last night. You were the one, not me. So I guess you are clingy, aren't you, girl? That's what he said. I didn't say that. However, that really frustrated Chelsea. And they really got to this boiling point where Jimmy said, all right, I'm leaving. So he actually spent the night outside of the apartment and went somewhere else. Not great. So before we check in on some of the other couples now that they're back home in Charlotte, it's time to take a little intermission and talk about Brittany and Kenneth. Oh boy. So I wondered why the producers kind of cut back to Brittany and Kenneth, and I'm like, what's going on? Well, guys, this isn't good if you're a fan of Brittany and Kenneth. At this point, we learn that Kenneth is very introverted, and he's always attached to his phone, which is seriously a problem when Brittany's trying to connect with him, and Brittany does call out the fact that Kenneth seems to be distancing himself from her, now that they're back in the real world. So Kenneth is like, hold up. Can you give me grace? Maybe I'm not going to always be extroverted, I'm going to be introverted. Maybe when I wake up in the morning, it's not going to be a good morning, my love, it's going to be a sup. Which pretty much is what he said, you know, hey. But listen, okay, sure, show grace, that's fine, I get it. But how many times will this happen for it to be a bad pattern, you know? And then Brittany brings up the fact that, oh, okay, well, I'm mad at something else too. You got home late last night. And Kenneth then asked, hey, can you not judge me for getting home late last night? This seems to be him asking for a lot of grace for unusual behavior, right? So right then and there, my radar's going off, like, is Kenneth in this? What's going on, guys? I don't know, something is off. And it gets to another boiling point. Brittany says, I think the missing piece between us is him not craving her. She's craving him. And Kenneth says, well, maybe that's happening to you, like in your eyes. And again, I'm starting to feel like Kenneth is tapping out at this point. Brittany then goes through some more of her receipts and says, hey, we've barely kissed since we've gotten back home. And I do think this is the biggest hurdle so far of the relationship. And, well, it's going to be the last hurdle because Kenneth goes right back to his phone and eventually comes to the conclusion that it won't work between them. So he calls off the engagement. I'm going to drown my eyes in the Cheez-Its. But, oh my gosh. How did that happen? It sort of just escalated so quickly. And, well, it seems like, if I had to guess, he made his mind up before they left the Dominican Republic. And when it happens, you know, Brittany's crying, Kenneth gives a hug, and then goes upstairs. The mics catch him saying, like, yo, all right, well, we're finally done here. Like, can I come stay with you, homie? And, well, Brittany's just by herself. And to me, I was actually really disappointed in Kenneth because he was acting very cold towards Brittany. I mean, that was your now ex-fiancée, and you claimed to love her. You made the decision to love her, and I don't know. It just made me disappointed that he acted that way towards her afterwards. But y'all let me know if you agree with me. So now we're going to move on to the other engaged couples we hadn't talked about upon their return to Charlotte. We got Laura and Jeremy reveals that he owned a nutrition business. The boy's an entrepreneur. And then when they're looking at this framed newspaper article of Jeremy and his father talking about that nutrition business, Jeremy says, hey, that's the last photo that my dad and I took together. And Laura kind of blew it off. Oh my gosh, when someone opens up to you like that, especially your fiance, Laura, you're not going to acknowledge that? Like, what else do you have to do? I guess going into his kitchen and making sure he's clean is more important, but what? And then we got Amy and Johnny. They're at Amy's home at this point, and Amy says something that made me roll my eyes. Amy said, I'm a crystal girl. Oh no. Oh man, listen, Not judging, right? But at the same time, I'm a man of God. I'm a Christian, believe in the Word of God. That crystal stuff, I just don't vibe with it. Now, if it was like anything else and it's not being used for like energy and stuff like that, whatever. But in this instance, she uses it for like energy. So what does Johnny do? Johnny did everything that America was thinking, or most of America, I guess. Johnny's like, flag, throws like a flag in the air, and Amy's like, what, is that a deal breaker? And Johnny's like, we'll see, or something. But if you notice, I think it's on Johnny's left forearm, he's got a tattoo of a cross. So Misa think that's going to be a little bit of a red flag for him, and maybe too big of a hurdle for him to overcome. And as they're going around the house, they get into one of Amy's rooms, and Amy says, listen, let's have a conversation about our family in the future. I don't want a kid for the next 5 years, and I won't get on birth control either. She says it messes up the chemistry of her body, which is true. You know, birth control pills do that, and a lot of women take birth control not for birth control. You know, it's for other things, you know, and well, in this instance, Johnny's like, I don't want that. You know, Johnny's like, actually, you should be on it. If you don't want a kid for the next 5 years, just be on it. All my other past girlfriends have. So that's a little tiff between them. I don't know. That's definitely a topic of conversation to have before you get married. Alrighty, y'all. So now we're getting into the section that had me rolling and on the edge of my seat when it happened. Guys, Jessica from the pods is back. It's 19 days until weddings, guys. Under a month. And Jessica shows up to meet none other than the snake, Laura. We got 2 snakes, y'all. I would honestly at this point say that Jessica's a snake as well, guys, because they talk about some nefarious things. Apparently, Jimmy sent Jessica a friend request on social media. Red flag, Jimmy. He withdrew the friend request according to Jessica and then set his profile on private. Chelsea, ya mans, got caught, okay? But Laura's like, oh, well, I got a story. I want to match yours. Laura said that Sarah Ann DM'd Jeremy and ended the message with, and I quote, If there's ever a chance your mind is shifting in your choice, I would love the opportunity to meet you, regardless of whatever way you go. Yeah, and that definitely comes into play in just a little bit. We're almost there, guys. However, Jessica says, all right, back to me and Jimmy. Jessica says, listen, I'm not over Jimmy. I still get butterflies when I think about him. And I looked at his ex-girlfriends and they all look like me. Y'all, as a reality show fan, yeah, I know exactly where this is going. However, Laura says, let me stop and ask you a question. Hey, if you could still meet Jimmy, would you? What an instigator. Well, Jessica does say yes, though, so... Ooh, guys, this is gonna be interesting. Alright, now let's shift back to our time in Charlotte with our engaged couples, and let's check in on AD and Clay. So now we're gonna start meeting some family members, right? So AD is meeting Clay's mom and sister. AD reveals that she's a VIP nightclub manager, and I did not know that. Maybe I missed it. Let me know in the comments if I did, but that would require her to work really late nights, right? And Clay has already expressed that he's got to work weird hours too during the day. So Clay's mom gets right into the tough questions, right? Talking about their time management, life, work balance, all that stuff, and their time together. And as they're answering these questions and having this conversation, there was a moment that I noticed. AD was feeling cold, and Clay didn't give his jacket to her. Instead, Clay's mom gave her what it looked like a lightweight scarf or something like a jacket instead. Ooh, Clay, listen, even if, you know, like my mom tried to do that, I'd be like, no, it's okay. Honey, take mine. You know what I mean? I'm telling y'all. Sorry. That to me, not great. And then they start butting heads during the conversation because AD doesn't think they spend enough time together to bond because of Clay's work schedule. And Clay is starting to basically defend himself here and say, hey, I've been working, you're just starting to work, we gotta iron it out, but you know, I gotta be the one that stays on top of my craft, XYZ, and then AD's like, yeah, well, I'm gonna have to work those long hours too, and then Clay says, well, what's the problem? Yo, but he says it with some gumption and not in a good way, okay? Because the minute he said it, you could slice the air with a butter knife, y'all. It was so tense. It was a little harsh, and Clay's mom said, I'm gonna take a sip, and I don't blame you, that was something. But eventually, Clay's mom offers a good bit of advice and says, if the love is there, you make the time for each other. And yeah, I agree with her. So that's the end of that family meeting. Now let's move on to another family meeting. I have some thoughts about this one. Amy and Johnny are spending the day together. They're taking a dance class actually before the family meeting. It's bachata lessons to prepare for their wedding day. They're definitely getting the lovey-dovey edit here though. I think at this point, now that Kenneth and Brittany are out of the picture, they're the #1 couple that are being propped up by the Love is Blind team for season 6. If I'm wrong, I'll be wrong. I'll eat the crow on that one, but it seems like they're propping them up. So eventually, they do their little dance lessons, and then they go back to the house and prep. They're making cookies, salad, hopefully with no raisins, and other things, but Amy is meeting Johnny's sisters. This was an interesting one. There weren't any tough questions being asked, and it did seem like it went well. People are laughing, having a good time, getting to know Amy and getting to know them both together, and it seems like Johnny's sisters approve of Amy. But that's not what caught my eye, okay? At one point during the dinner, there was a dog on somebody's lap, and they're eating. Like, imagine this. I got a desk right here, okay, and I put a dog here. You don't think that dog here is going to get in the food and on the table, and you don't think that dog's going to try to eat the food on the table? I don't care how well trained a dog is. It smells food, it's going to go after it, okay? So, I kept racking my brain around this. Why? But I guess it sounds about white. So let's move on to Chelsea and Jimmy. Alrighty, y'all. Well, they both had a conversation after the argument that we talked about previously that made Jimmy leave for the night. They say sorry. Jimmy said, listen, we both told each other things that were hurtful, and eventually Jimmy ends the conversation with saying he wants a future with Chelsea, but to me, he didn't sound very confident. Yeah, man. There's interesting notes, okay? I don't know what that hand movement was, but there's interesting notes. It's probably me typing my notes furiously while watching that moment, but I don't know, man. Something is still afoot between them. And I think that foot is named Jessica. So now we're going to move on to Chelsea meeting Jimmy's friends, right? So not Jimmy's family, but his friends, who happen to be 2 girls. It's interesting. It's very peculiar that he brings both of his friends that he claims to be very close with, and they're girls, and there's nothing wrong with that inherently if there were some guy friends also at this meeting. Does anyone else think that's a little odd? I'm sorry, I do. I think that's kind of weird because they start to get into conversation topics like Jimmy's sex life. God forgive me, that is just weird to say out loud, and it's just weird to think about because why would they know about that? But apparently Jimmy's friends really like Chelsea. They're having a good old time. I'm just sitting here kind of shaking my head and trying to, wrap my mind around this situation. And lastly, guys, we're talking about Laura and Jeremy because it's going to bleed into another topic between them two, which is super dramatic. And boy, I love it as a Love is Blind fan. All right, so Laura, they're prepping, right, for her family to come and meet Jeremy for the first time. But Laura's being kind of a jerk, and she disses Jeremy as they're kind of teasing each other. And Jeremy says something, and then Laura says, well, who's the one with the college degree? Gosh. Laura then continues to have this conversation surrounding her parents' relationship and continues to paint their relationship as awful. They're together, but they feel sort of estranged. And at this point, I'm starting to think, do I even like Laura anymore? She's so doom and gloom about Jeremy meeting her family that I'm starting to wonder if she even wants this at all. So eventually, Laura's family comes. It's her parents, mom and dad, brother and sister-in-law. And Laura, they start the conversation, all nice hugs and whatnot, and then they start asking about their time in the pods. And Laura brings up Sarah Ann, and apparently all three of them in their love triangle. Like, why? Why would you do that? And then she even goes one step further, and Laura brings up the DM that Sarah sent to Jeremy, and Jeremy is thinking, are we really doing this right now? And Laura claims that she's over the direct message, whatever, but I highly doubt it because you brought it up to Jessica and now we're stirring the pot yet again. But Laura, throughout the conversation, continues to put down Jeremy, and at this point, I'm starting to think, man, there are red flags everywhere. This is not good, okay? And Laura's mom is trying to kind of like break the ice a little and say, well, I really like Jeremy. He's a nice guy, But she notices that Laura and Jeremy have been speaking pretty harshly to one another. I just think Laura was a problem child growing up. That's an assumption of mine, but it just feels like she was because, boy, is she acting up right now. I don't know why she's acting out like this. So eventually, I believe we get to a point where, okay, hey, Laura's family really does like Jeremy. And Laura, to me, was looking for her family to not like Jeremy as a way out. All right, it's a guess. It's a prediction. It's a theory of mine. But that's got to be what she was looking for because she kept bringing up every negative thing about Jeremy. So fast forward to the next day, and we see Laura on the couch and Jeremy on a chair separate from the couch, and Laura's confronting Jeremy about something huge. She's mad at Jeremy for being out until 5 in the morning, and Jeremy claims they were originally going to a karaoke bar. It changed to another bar, and they went out for drinks, but the bar closed at like 2 a.m. So what were you doing, Jeremy, between 2 to 5? He was hanging out with Sarah Ann. Sarah Ann was out at the club he was also at, and apparently Jeremy really wanted to clear the air with Sarah Ann and had a conversation with her for quite a while. I don't think that's a good move, bro. Oh, man. However, I will say, before I move on to the next point, Laura seems to be kind of hypocritical here because was she not just stirring the pot with Jessica and Jimmy and trying to be a homewrecker with Jimmy and Chelsea by telling Jessica, hey, would you want to meet Jimmy? It's the same difference. It's just she's the one instigating, and in this case, she's not. And Laura reveals that this argument's happening on the day of Laura supposedly meeting Jeremy's mom. I don't know if that's still going to happen because apparently Jeremy shared his location with Laura and lied about being in the parking lot at the bar with Sarah Ann because apparently he was at Sarah's house in that location. Jeremy, homie, you done took the shovel and dug your own hole because what are you doing, bro? Why? You shared your location with Laura, no problem, fine. But why would you lie about your location? Bro, this is baffling to me. So the episode ends with Laura storming out of the room and saying, I want out. Oh man. So by a show of hands in the comments, how many of y'all even think Laura's gonna want to meet Jeremy's mom at this point? Can you imagine that conversation? Yeah, your son's a liar. Dramatic music and some bad lyrics, but oh my gosh, man, I can't wait. And if you also can't wait for my recap of episodes 10 and 11 next week, please go ahead and hit the big red button below and subscribe to the channel, y'all, because hey, we made it to the end of my recap of week 2 of Love is Blind. And let me tell you, this was a fun one. Thank you guys for sticking with me because, boy, just to rehash all that in my mind again is like... That week was really good television for reality show fans, especially fans of Love is Blind. So again, let me know in the comments below what y'all even think about this week and who's trifling more, Laura or Jessica? I have an answer, but I want to hear from you first. Alrighty, y'all. Again, thanks so much for watching. I can't wait for next week. So yeah, just get ready, and I'll catch you at the next screening.